The wandering star had seen better days. Captain Korath of the Centauri Exploration Corps stared at the cascading system, failures on his command display, mandibles clicking in distress. The small scout vessel shuddered as another power relay failed, plunging sections of the ship into emergency lighting. Communications officer Trill, status on the distress beacon, Korath asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Broadcasting on all council frequencies, Captain, the young officer replied, her scales shifting to a nervous yellow. Nearest response is the Harmonious Dawn out of Sector 7. Estimated arrival, 14 standard days. 14 days. They had life support for maybe 10 if they were lucky. Captain, Science Officer Krell spoke up from his station, there's something peculiar about this system. The stellar cartography doesn't match council records. We have bigger problems than, sir, you don't understand, this is Sol, the Forbidden Zone. A chill ran through the bridge. Every species in the Galactic Council knew about Sol. It was marked on every star chart with a single notation. Primitive species quarantine protocol active. Do not approach. We didn't approach it, Korath said grimly. Our jump drive malfunctioned and dropped us here. How are we supposed to know? The primitives shouldn't even have radio yet, Krell muttered, checking his data. Last survey was 600 cycles ago, pre-industrial, stone and metal tools. No space capability for at least another 1,000 cycles. Korath was about to respond when Trill suddenly straightened, her scales flashing bright orange in alarm. Captain, contact. Multiple vessels approaching at high velocity. The Harmonious Dawn. No, sir, the signature is unknown. They're not in any council database. On the view screen, three massive shapes emerged from the darkness of space, and Korath felt his blood turn to ice. Commander James Patterson stood on the bridge of the UHSV Eisenhower, watching the alien vessel limp through space like a wounded bird. The warship's artificial gravity hummed beneath his feet, steady as bedrock despite the vessel's 7-kilometer length. Status, Lieutenant. Foreign vessel is dead in the water, sir, reported Lieutenant Ashley Brennan from Tactical. Multiple hull breaches, catastrophic engine failure, life support critical. They've got maybe a week before things get really bad. Any response to our hails? Negative, sir. Though their distress beacon is going full blast on about 50 different frequencies, some of them are pretty creative. Patterson allowed himself a slight smile. Are we recording everything? Every byte, sir. Intelligence will want this. For 70 years, humanity had known about the Galactic Council. Not because the Council knew about humanity, they were delightfully ignorant, but because humanity had learned to listen. When you built quantum receivers capable of detecting whispers across light years, you learned things. Like the fact that you were supposed to be primitive, that you were quarantined for your own good, that the galaxy was run by a committee of bureaucrats who thought humans were still banging rocks together. Humanity had collectively decided that this was hilarious and incredibly useful. Take us in, Patterson ordered. Nice and slow. I don't want to spook them more than they already are. And someone get Admiral Nakamura on the line. She'll want to know we're bringing guests to Fortress Olympus. The Eisenhower moved forward, flanked by her sister ships, the Washington and the Churchill. Each vessel bristled with weaponry that would have given the Council's military strategists nightmares, if they'd known such weapons were possible. Plasma lances, graviton disruptors, point defense grids that could track and eliminate thousands of targets simultaneously. The primitives had been busy. By the three suns, Trill whispered. The human vessels filled the view screen. They were enormous, each one easily 3 times the size of a council-heavy cruiser. Their hulls were a dark, matte grey that seemed to drink in the starlight, and they moved with a predatory grace that spoke of immense power barely restrained. They're hailing us, Trill said, her voice shaking. Audio and visual. On screen, Korath ordered, drawing himself up to his full height. The face that appeared was bipedal, as the old surveys had indicated, but there was an intelligence in those eyes that no primitive should possess. The human male, if the records were correct, wore a dark blue uniform with insignia that suggested military rank. Alien vessel, this is Commander James Patterson of the United Human Space Vessel Eisenhower. We've received your distress call. Do you require assistance? The voice was calm, professional, and spoke perfect galactic common. Korath's mind reeled. They speak common. They have vessels. They have technology that makes our ships look like toys. This is. This is Captain Korath of the Centauri Exploration Corps, vessel Wandering Star. We have suffered catastrophic systems failure. Yes, we require assistance. The human's face softened slightly. We're not going to hurt you, Captain. We're here to help. With your permission, we'd like to bring your vessel aboard the Eisenhower and transport you to the nearest repair facility. Your crew will be treated as honored guests. Aboard, Krell whispered urgently. Captain, their vessel is large enough to carry us inside it, Korath finished. He looked at the human commander. You would do this for us. We are strangers to you. Patterson smiled, and it reached his eyes. Out here, Captain, we're all strangers until we're friends. Besides, can't have people dying in our neighborhood. Bad for the property values. Despite everything, Korath found himself laughing, a chittering sound that the translator carried across the void. The wandering star sat in the Eisenhower's cavernous shuttle bay like a child's toy, and Korath was trying very hard not to have an existential crisis about it. How? Krell kept muttering, running his scanner over every surface they passed. How did they advance this far? It's impossible. 600 cycles. They were being escorted through the human warship by a young officer who'd introduced herself as Ensign Rachel Kowalski. She was patient with their constant questions and frequent stops to stare at things that apparently seemed mundane to her, but were revolutionary to them. The artificial gravity, Krell said, kneeling to press his palm against the deck. There's no rotational force, no graviton emitters that I can detect. What's generating it? Quantum field manipulation, Kowalski said cheerfully. We figured it out about 40 years ago, changed everything, made the big ships practical. 40 cycles, Krell breathed. We've been working on that problem for 3,000 cycles. They passed through a section where human crew members were going about their duties. Most wore the same dark blue uniforms, moving with purpose and efficiency. Many stopped to watch the aliens with curiosity, but Korath noted that none showed fear or hostility. If anything, they seemed excited. Your crew is well disciplined, Korath observed. The crew of the Eisenhower is the best in the fleet, Kowalski said with obvious pride. Though I might be biased, this is my first posting after the academy. How large is your fleet? Trill asked innocently. Kowalski's smile was enigmatic. Large enough. Oh, here we are. The observation deck. I thought you might want to see where we're headed before you arrive. She palmed open a door, and the Centauri crew stepped into a room with a transparent aluminum viewport that stretched the entire width of the wall. Beyond it, space stretched in all directions, and directly ahead, growing steadily larger, was something that defied description. Great merciful void, Korath whispered. Fortress Olympus hung in space like a small moon, except no moon had ever been assembled with such geometric precision. The starbase was a massive sphere, easily 50 kilometers in diameter, with countless docking pylons extending from it like the rays of a star. Ships moved around it in organized patterns. Some were military vessels like the Eisenhower, but others were clearly civilian craft of various sizes and purposes. But what truly took Korath's breath away was the interior. Through the viewport, he could see that the entire sphere was hollow, and inside was a city. An actual city, suspended in space, with buildings rising from the inner surface in every direction. Lights glittered like stars themselves, and he could see green spaces, parks, if he wasn't mistaken, distributed throughout the superstructure. Welcome to Fortress Olympus, Kowalski said. Population: 200,000 permanent residents, plus another 100,000 rotating military and civilian personnel. It's the largest of Earth's orbital starbases, though Mars and the outer planets have their own facilities. This is. You live here, in space? Trill asked, her scales cycling through colors so fast it was almost dizzying. Lots of people do. I grew up on Fortress Columbia, that's the one near Mars. Always wanted to see Earth's bases, though. They're supposed to be even more impressive. More impressive than this. Krell looked like he might faint. Admiral Rebecca Nakamura stood in the command center of Fortress Olympus, reviewing the reports from the Eisenhower. Around her, dozens of holographic displays showed the status of the Sol system's defenses. The starbase's sensors could track a ping-pong ball at the orbit of Neptune, and right now, they were very interested in the alien vessel being tracked into Docking Bay 7. Assessment, she asked her intelligence officer, Commander David Hutchins. The Wandering Star is definitely a Centauri exploration vessel, ma'am. Matches the profiles we've intercepted from Council transmissions. Technology is. Well, it's not impressive. Fusion drive, chemical thrusters for maneuvering basic energy shields. We outclassed them about 60 years ago. Crew: 12 Centauri, all civilians as far as we can tell. Captain Korath has a clean record in the Council databases. No military service, no intelligence connections. They're just scientists who got unlucky. Nakamura nodded slowly. So now we have a choice to make. Do we maintain the masquerade, or do we let them see who we really are? With respect, ma'am, I think that ship has sailed. They've seen the Eisenhower. They're about to see Olympus. Even if we wanted to hide, it's too late. Then we might as well make a good impression. Nakamura smiled. Prepare a formal welcome, full honors, and get Dr. Emily Thornton from the Xenosociology department. If these Centauri are going to be our first official contact with the Council, I want to make sure we don't accidentally insult them. And after the repairs, ma'am. When they want to go home, Nakamura's smile widened. Then we let them go. With a message. The Wandering Star was given docking bay 7, which was, according to Ensign Kowalski, normally used for heavy cargo vessels. The bay could have held 20 ships the size of theirs, and the repair facilities made even Krell fall silent. But it was the welcome party that truly stunned them. As they disembarked from the Eisenhower's shuttle, they were met by a full honor guard in dress uniforms, standing at attention. A band played something that the translator identified as ceremonial music. And at the center of it all stood a human woman in an admiral's uniform, her dark hair pulled back, her posture radiating authority. Captain Korath, she said, stepping forward with her hand extended in what their briefings had identified as a human greeting. I'm Admiral Rebecca Nakamura, commander of Fortress Olympus. On behalf of humanity, welcome to the Sol system. Korath extended his own hand carefully, mimicking the gesture. The Admiral's grip was firm but not aggressive. Admiral Nakamura, we are overwhelmed by your hospitality, but I must confess confusion. The Galactic Council's records indicate that your species is pre-spaceflight, yet you have vessels and technology that surpass anything in Council space. Nakamura's smile was diplomatic, but held a hint of mischief. Yes, well, about that. Captain, there's a lot we need to discuss. But first, let's get your crew settled and your ship repaired. Then we can talk about why the Council's records might be a bit outdated. Dr. Emily Thornton had been studying the Galactic Council for 15 years, and she'd never expected to meet an actual Council member face to face. Now, she sat across from Captain Korath in one of Olympus's observation lounges, with a view of Earth hanging in the viewport like a blue jewel. It's beautiful, Korath said quietly. Your homeworld. Thank you, we're rather fond of it. Emily poured tea, real tea from Earth, not synthesized, into 2 cups. I hope this is acceptable. Our xenobiologists confirmed that your species can process caffeine without issues. Korath accepted the cup, sniffing it curiously. Captain Patterson mentioned something similar. Coffee, he called it. Tea is more civilized, Emily said with a smile. Now I imagine you have questions. So many I don't know where to begin. Korath took a careful sip, but perhaps the most pressing. Why didn't you join the council? Surely a species with your capabilities would be welcomed. Emily set down her cup. That's the question, isn't it? The answer is complicated, but it comes down to what we learned when we first started listening to council transmissions 70 years ago. Listening? You mean you've been spying? Yes. We developed quantum communications and faster-than-light sensors before we had FTL drives. We could hear everything the council was broadcasting, read their public databases, intercept their communications. And what we learned was concerning. Korath leaned forward. Concerning how? The council means well, I genuinely believe that. But it's bureaucratic, slow to change, and frankly, technologically stagnant. Species join the council and then stop innovating because, well, why bother? Everything you need is already invented. Meanwhile, the council maintains quarantine zones around developing species, supposedly for their own good. The Prime Development Protocol, Korath said. It's designed to prevent cultural contamination of emerging species. It's designed to control them, Emily corrected gently. By the time a species is ready to join the council, they've been observed for centuries, their development guided through strategic technology releases, their culture analyzed and catalogued. They join not as equals, but as students who have been taught that the council's way is the only way. Korath's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. You believe the council would have done this to humanity? We know they would have. We intercepted the planning documents. In another century, a council first contact team would have arrived, bearing gifts of technology and wisdom. And humanity would have been so grateful, so eager to join, that we'd have given up our sovereignty without even realizing it. So you hid. We hid and we built. Without the council's help, we were free to make our own mistakes, develop our own solutions. We took paths the council never considered because they weren't proven. And yes, we had some disasters along the way, the Mars colony incident, the Titan reactor crisis, but we learned from them. We grew stronger. Emily gestured out the viewport at Earth and the other starbases that were visible as points of light in orbit. In 70 years, Captain, humanity went from nuclear fission to quantum fusion, from chemical rockets to graviton drives. from international squabbles to a unified government that spans the solar system. We did it ourselves, on our own terms. And now, Korath asked, what does humanity want? That, Emily said, is what we're still figuring out. Over the next week, the crew of the Wandering Star watched in amazement as human engineers swarmed over their vessel. The repairs were supposed to take days, but the humans worked with an efficiency that bordered on magical. They've replaced our entire power distribution network, Krell reported, scrolling through updates on a borrowed human tablet. The new system is 30% more efficient than the original. They also found 6 design flaws in our engine mounting that could have caused catastrophic failure within the next 500 cycles. They told me they were, just bringing it up to code, Korath said dryly. Trill entered the observation lounge where they'd gathered, her scales bright with excitement. Captain, you have to see the hydroponics bay. They're growing real plants, hundreds of species from Earth. The head gardener, Thomas, gave me seeds. Actual seeds that I can take home. The young communications officer had spent most of her time exploring the civilian sections of Olympus, and she'd returned each day with stories that seemed increasingly fantastical. Parks with trees reaching 3 stories high, restaurants serving food from every human culture, schools where children learned in zero-gravity classrooms, entertainment venues, art galleries, even a concert hall where musicians performed for crowds of thousands. It's not just a military installation, she said. It's a home. People raise families here. They have lives, careers, hopes, dreams. It's everything the Council says a space station could never be. The Council says a lot of things, Korath murmured. On the 7th day, Admiral Nakamura invited the Centauri crew to a formal dinner in one of Olympus's finest restaurants. The venue had a transparent floor that looked down on Earth, and Korath had to admit the vertigo was worth it for the view. Your ship is ready, Captain, Nakamura said, as they enjoyed what the humans called dessert, a sweet confection that Trill was demolishing with undisguised enthusiasm. All systems tested and certified. You're free to leave whenever you wish. You've been more than generous, Admiral. My crew and I are deeply grateful. I'm glad we could help. Nakamura paused, swirling wine in her glass. Captain, I know you'll need to report everything you've seen here to the Council. It would be my duty, yes. Then I want to be clear about humanity's position. We don't wish the Council any harm. We're not planning an invasion or seeking to disrupt your government, but we also won't be joining you. Not yet, at least. Maybe not ever. May I ask why? Surely there are benefits to Council membership. There are, Nakamura acknowledged. Trade, cultural exchange, mutual defense. But there are also costs. The Council has, let's say, guidelines about acceptable technology, appropriate cultural development, proper government structure. We've reviewed them all, and frankly, we don't fit the mold. So humanity will remain isolated. No, Nakamura said firmly. Humanity will remain independent. There's a difference. We are happy to establish diplomatic relations, to trade, to share knowledge on our terms. But we won't subordinate ourselves to a bureaucracy that thinks it knows what's best for every species in the galaxy. Korath was quiet for a long moment. The Council will not react well to this. I know. That's why I'm asking you to deliver a message for me. Nakamura produced a small data chip. Everything you've seen here, Olympus, the Eisenhower, our technology, is documented on this chip. Take it to your council. Let them know that humanity exists, that we're advanced, and that we're watching. Tell them we're willing to talk, but only as equals. Korath took the chip carefully. Admiral, this will change everything. Yes, Nakamura said with a slight smile. It will. The session of the Galactic Council's High Committee was tense even before Captain Korath finished his presentation. When the holographic display showed images of Fortress Olympus, several representatives gasped audibly. This is impossible, High Councillor Thex of the Vraxian Dominion declared, her crystalline form pulsing with agitated light. The Sol species was surveyed 600 cycles ago. They were primitives. With respect, High Councillor, they are primitives no longer, Korath said. He'd spent the 2-week journey back to Council space preparing this report, knowing it would be met with disbelief. I have personally witnessed their capabilities. The humans are not only spacefaring, they are, in many ways, more advanced than we are. Preposterous, muttered Councillor Drex of the Tellurian Concord. No species develops that quickly. It violates every model we have. Perhaps our models are flawed, Korath suggested, earning him several sharp looks. High Councillor Thex raised a crystalline hand for silence. Captain Korath, you've delivered your report, and it will be analyzed thoroughly. The committee thanks you for your service and your discretion in this matter. Korath recognized a dismissal when he heard one. He left the chamber. Outside, Trill was waiting for him. How did it go? About as well as expected. They don't want to believe it. But they have the evidence. The recordings, the scans, the data chip from Admiral Nakamura. Evidence can be dismissed as sensor errors or fabrications. Belief requires accepting that the Council's understanding of species development is fundamentally wrong. Korath sighed. That's not an easy thing for any government to admit. Inside the chamber, the debate had already begun. We need to send a fleet immediately, Councillor Drex insisted. If this species is as advanced as the report suggests, they could be a threat. Or an ally, countered Councillor Prill of the Nexian Federation, their tentacles weaving complex patterns of emphasis. The humans rendered aid to a distressed vessel without hesitation. That speaks to their character. It speaks to their cunning, Drex shot back. They've been hiding from us for decades, spying on our transmissions, learning our weaknesses. Now they reveal themselves from a position of strength. This is a calculated move. Then we must respond with calculation rather than panic, High Councillor Thex said firmly. I propose we send a diplomatic envoy to Sol. A small fleet, large enough to be respectable, small enough not to be threatening. We will assess these humans directly and determine their intentions. And if their intentions are hostile? Drex asked. Thex's crystalline form pulsed with a color that suggested grim humor. Then, Counselor, we hope very much that their technology is exaggerated in Captain Korath's report. Admiral Nakamura stood in Olympus's command center, watching the Council fleet emerge from FTL at the edge of the Sol system. 15 vessels, ranging from small frigates to a massive dreadnought that was probably the Council's flagship. Impressive, she murmured. Outgunned and outclassed by everything we have in the inner system, Commander Hutchins replied, but impressive for their tech level, yes. The Council's dreadnought was broadcasting on multiple frequencies, and the message was being translated in real time. This is High Councillor Thex of the Galactic Council, requesting permission to approach Earth and establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. We come in peace. How polite, Nakamura said. All right, let's not keep them waiting. Open a channel. The viewscreen flickered to life, showing the Council's bridge. High Councillor Thex was there. Her crystalline form refracted the light in dazzling patterns. Beside her stood several other council members, all watching with expressions ranging from curiosity to apprehension. High Councillor Thex, I am Admiral Rebecca Nakamura, commander of Fortress Olympus. On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to the Sol system. Admiral Nakamura, thank you for receiving us. I must confess your Fortress Olympus is even more impressive than Captain Korath's report suggested. We like to think we've done well for primitives, Nakamura said, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I assume you'd like to discuss terms for formal relations. That is why we're here, yes. However, the Council would greatly appreciate a tour of your facilities and an opportunity to meet with your government leaders. We find ourselves reassessing many of our assumptions about your species. I think we can arrange that. Fair warning, though, our government leaders will want to discuss some uncomfortable topics. The quarantine protocols, for instance, and the fact that you were planning to manipulate our development for the next century or so. Thex's form pulsed with what the human xenosociology experts identified as embarrassment. Yes, we anticipated those conversations would be difficult. Difficult, but necessary. Tell you what, why don't you bring your diplomatic team to Olympus? We'll give you the full tour, introduce you to some of our people, and then we can sit down for serious negotiations. Sound good? That would be acceptable, Admiral. Excellent. Oh, and High Councillor. You might want to prepare your team for some culture shock. We've changed a lot in 600 years. The Council delegation's tour of Fortress Olympus was carefully choreographed to make a point. First, they were taken through the industrial sectors, where automated factories assembled everything from starship components to medical equipment. Then the agricultural levels, where genetically optimized crops grew under artificial suns that would never set. The residential districts came next, neighborhoods that could have been transplanted from Earth, complete with schools, parks, and shops. But it was the technology demonstrations that truly stunned them. In one lab, human scientists showed them a quantum computer that processed information using entangled particles across multiple dimensions. In another, engineers demonstrated a graviton projector that could create a localized field strong enough to crush a starship, or protect one from similar attacks. How did you develop this? Councillor Prill asked, their tentacles quivering with excitement as they examined a medical scanner that could detect diseases at the cellular level. Our best equipment can't match this precision. Dr. Philip Garrett, head of Olympus's medical division, shrugged. We had a problem, cancer specifically, and we needed to solve it. So we threw everything we had at it until we did. This scanner came out of that research. It can detect about 600 different types of cancer before they become symptomatic. And you just invented it without counsel guidance. Necessity is the mother of invention, counselor. When you don't have anyone to give you the answers, you learn to find them yourself. High Counselor Thex had remained quiet through most of the tour, but Nakamura noticed her crystalline form pulsing in complex patterns, the Vraxian equivalent of deep thought. Admiral, Thex said finally, I believe I understand now why you chose to remain hidden. The Council's protocols would have constrained you. They would have crippled us, Nakamura corrected gently. High Counselor, I don't mean offense, but your council has been stable for so long that it's forgotten how to grow. You've optimized for preservation rather than progress. A harsh assessment, but accurate. When was the last major technological breakthrough in council space? Something genuinely new, not just a refinement of existing technology. Thex was quiet for a long moment. Approximately 800 cycles ago, the Nexians developed the current generation of FTL drives. 800 years, Nakamura said softly. In that same time, humanity went from wooden ships to vessels that can cross our solar system in hours. From candlelight to quantum fusion. From believing the Earth was flat to building cities in orbit around it. You make us sound stagnant. You are stagnant, but you don't have to stay that way. The formal negotiations took place in Olympus's main conference hall, a circular room with a holographic display of the galaxy rotating slowly in the center. On one side sat the council delegation, 15 representatives from across known space. On the other sat humanity's delegation, led by Secretary General William Travis, the head of the United Earth government. Let's address the elephant in the room, Travis began, and then had to pause to explain what an elephant was, which broke some of the tension. The council wants us to join. We're not interested in membership, but we are interested in partnership. What's the distinction? Councillor Drex asked suspiciously. Membership would mean accepting council laws, council oversight, council restrictions on our development. Partnership means we work together as equals, trade, share knowledge, defend common interests, but we maintain our sovereignty. The council has never had a partner relationship with a species, High Councillor Thex said. You're either a member or you're not. Then it's time for something new, Travis said firmly. Look, we're not trying to undermine the council. From what we've learned, you've brought stability and peace to hundreds of species. That's genuinely impressive. But humanity has always been, let's say, independent-minded. We don't do well with being told what we can and can't invent, what technologies are appropriate for our development level. Some restrictions exist for good reason, Councillor Prill pointed out. Certain technologies are dangerous. The Council has seen species destroy themselves through reckless innovation. And we've seen species stagnate through excessive caution, Travis countered. Balance is necessary. Maybe that's what we can offer each other. You provide wisdom and experience. We provide innovation and, let's call it, creative problem-solving. The negotiations continued for 3 days. There were arguments, compromises, and moments where both sides seemed ready to walk away. But slowly, carefully, a framework emerged. Humanity would establish formal diplomatic relations with the Council, but would not join as a member. Trade agreements would be negotiated individually between human and Council species. Technology sharing would be voluntary and mutual. No forced transfers in either direction. And perhaps most importantly, humanity would be free to continue developing without Council oversight. In exchange, humanity agreed to share information about any discoveries that could pose a threat to galactic stability and to provide humanitarian aid to Council species in need. They also agreed to establish a joint research station, a facility where human and Council scientists could work together on projects of mutual interest. This is unprecedented, High Councillor Thex said as they reviewed the final draft of the agreement. That seems to be humanity's specialty, Secretary General Travis replied with a smile. 3 months after the Council's diplomatic mission returned home, Fortress Olympus received its first official non-human residents. A group of Nexian scientists had volunteered for the Joint Research Station program, and they arrived with equipment, enthusiasm, and a healthy sense of wonder. Dr. Emily Thornton met them at the docking bay, along with a team of human scientists who'd been selected for the program. Welcome to Olympus, she said, extending her hand to the lead Nexian, a researcher named Trilvex. We're excited to work with you. The excitement is mutual, Trilvex replied, their tentacles performing a gesture that the translator identified as extreme happiness. I've read your papers on quantum entanglement applications. Some of your theories are revolutionary. Some of our theories are completely wrong, Emily said cheerfully. But that's how science works. You fail, you learn, you try again. Come on, let me show you to your labs. We've set up equipment based on the specifications you sent, but if you need anything else, just ask. As they walked through Olympus, Emily noticed Trilvex constantly looking around, taking in every detail. It's different than I expected, the Nexian scientist said finally. Different how? More alive. Our space stations are functional, efficient, but sterile. This feels like a place where people actually live. Because they do. That's the secret, really. If you want people to thrive in space, you have to make space feel like home. In the months that followed, the joint research program became a surprising success. Human and council scientists approached problems from completely different angles, and the combination of council experience and human innovation produced breakthroughs neither could have achieved alone. The Nexians improved human FTL drive efficiency by 30% using mathematical models the humans had never considered. The humans showed the Nexians how to miniaturize their shield generators, a problem that had stumped council engineers for decades. More importantly, friendships formed. Humans and aliens worked side by side, shared meals, complained about their respective governments, and discovered that intelligence and curiosity were universal languages. The xenosociology department had to triple in size to handle all the researchers documenting these interactions. And throughout known space, word spread. The species that had been primitive was primitive no more. Humanity had not only caught up, they'd leapfrogged the council in many ways. And they'd done it alone, without guidance, without the benefits of council membership. It made other species think. It made them question. If humanity could do it, why couldn't they? On Earth, in the original United Nations building that now served as a museum, Secretary General Travis met privately with Admiral Nakamura. "You're smiling," he observed. "The council just announced a new initiative," Nakamura said, pulling up a holographic display. "They're reducing restrictions on member species research programs, encouraging innovation, experimenting with what they're calling adaptive development protocols. They're even talking about reforming the quarantine procedures." Travis whistled softly. "Because of us. Because we proved it could be done differently. We showed them that their way isn't the only way." Nakamura leaned back in her chair. "It's going to take decades, maybe centuries, but the council is starting to change. And we get to be part of that. Are you satisfied with the arrangement? I know you were concerned about maintaining our independence." "I am satisfied. We got what we needed, freedom to develop on our terms, respect as equals, and the opportunity to influence the council from the outside rather than being absorbed by it." Nakamura paused. "Though I'll admit there's a certain irony to it all." "How so?" "The council wanted to guide our development, to teach us their ways, to make us into something they could understand and control. Instead, we ended up teaching them. Sometimes the student becomes the teacher." Travis laughed. "I'm sure the council members love that comparison." "Some of them do, actually. High Councillor Thex sent me a personal message last week. She said humanity has been a much-needed disruption to established patterns. I think that's Vraxian for you're a pain in the ass, but we're glad you're here." High praise indeed. 5 years after first contact, Captain Korath found himself back in the Sol system, but this time as part of an official cultural exchange program. The Wandering Star had been retired to a museum on Olympus, actually, where it sat in a place of honor as the ship that changed everything. Korath walked through the civilian district of the starbase, marveling at how much had changed and how much had stayed the same. There were aliens here now, not many, but enough that they no longer drew stares. A Tellurian family was enjoying ice cream in a small park. A group of Centauri students was touring the engineering facilities. A mixed human-Nexian crew was laughing together outside a bar called the Quantum Leap. "Captain Korath." He turned to see Trill running toward him, her scales flashing with joy. She'd been assigned to the Joint Research Station and had apparently decided that Olympus was her permanent home. "Trill, it's good to see you again." "You too, Captain. Are you here for the ceremony?" "I am. Admiral Nakamura personally invited me. It's going to be amazing. Come on, I'll walk with you to the observation deck." As they walked, Trill chatted about her research, her human colleagues, and her growing collection of Earth plants. She'd become something of an expert on human agriculture and was working on adapting Earth crops for cultivation on Centauri worlds. "How are things back home?" Korath asked. Trill's scales flickered to a more subdued color. "Different. Better, I think, but different. A lot of young people are questioning things now. Why we don't innovate more, why we always wait for the council to tell us what's safe. Some of the older generation doesn't like it, but change is happening. Because of humanity. Because humanity showed us it was possible. They were the spark, but we're the ones who chose to catch fire. They reached the observation deck, where a crowd had already gathered. Humans, aliens, military personnel, civilians, scientists, and engineers. Admiral Nakamura stood near the viewport, now with additional stars on her uniform. She'd been promoted to Fleet Admiral, overseeing all of humanity's space-based operations. Captain Korath, she greeted him warmly. Thank you for coming. I wouldn't miss this, Admiral, or should I say Fleet Admiral. Still getting used to it myself, Nakamura admitted with a smile. Shall we begin? She stepped up to a podium, and the crowd quieted. 5 years ago, Nakamura began. A small exploration vessel suffered a critical malfunction and sent out a distress call. We answered that call because it was the right thing to do. We had no way of knowing that this simple act of kindness would change the course of galactic history. She gestured out the viewport, where Earth hung in all its blue glory. Today, we celebrate not just first contact, but the friendship that grew from it. The Council and humanity have learned from each other, challenged each other, and ultimately made each other stronger. We've established trade routes, research partnerships, and cultural exchanges. We've shared art, music, literature, and ideas. We've proven that different doesn't mean incompatible. Nakamura paused, looking around at the diverse crowd. But more than that, we've proven something that I think the galaxy needed to see. That there's always room for growth, always room for new ideas, always room for change. The Council had been stable for so long that stability had become stagnation. Humanity's presence reminded everyone that progress is possible, that innovation doesn't have to mean chaos, and that the unknown isn't something to fear, it's something to explore. She smiled, and there was genuine warmth in it. So today, I'm pleased to announce the next phase of Human Council cooperation. Construction has begun on 3 new joint facilities. One here in Seoul, one in Council core space, and one at the frontier. These won't just be research stations. They'll be embassies, trade hubs, and cultural centers. Places where our peoples can meet, work together, and build something neither of us could build alone. The crowd erupted in applause. Korath found himself clapping along, his mandibles clicking in what he'd learned was the human equivalent of a smile. Additionally, Nakamura continued once the applause died down, I'm authorized to announce that the Council has formally invited humanity to participate in the Galactic Exploration Initiative, not as members, but as full partners. Together, we'll be mapping uncharted regions, making first contact with new species, and expanding the boundaries of known space. More applause, louder this time. The galaxy is vast, Nakamura said, her voice carrying over the crowd. It contains wonders we haven't imagined and challenges we haven't faced. But whatever lies ahead, we'll face it together, not as superiors and subordinates, not as teachers and students, but as partners and friends. She raised a glass, and the crowd did likewise. To the future, Nakamura said. To the future, the crowd echoed. As the celebration continued, Korath found himself standing at the viewport, looking out at Earth and the stars beyond. Admiral Nakamura joined him, 2 glasses of wine in hand. She offered him one. You know, Korath said after a moment, when my ship broke down in this system, I thought it was the worst luck imaginable. Stranded in a quarantine zone, waiting for rescue that might never come. And now I think it might have been the best thing that ever happened to me. To all of us, Nakamura smiled. Funny how life works out. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars. Admiral, Korath said finally, may I ask you something? When you first found us, you could have hidden your true capabilities. You could have pretended to be less advanced, maintained your secret. Why didn't you? Nakamura considered the question carefully. Because secrets have a cost, Captain. Every day we hid, we had to maintain the deception. Every advancement we made had to be concealed. It was exhausting, and more than that, it was lonely. Humanity was ready to step out of the shadows, to take our place in the galactic community, not as members or subjects, but as ourselves. She took a sip of her wine. Besides, there's a human saying, the truth will set you free. We were tired of hiding. When you showed up, it felt like fate was giving us permission to stop pretending. And if the Council had reacted with hostility, then we would have dealt with it. But we gambled that most species are fundamentally decent, that they'd rather have friends than enemies. Nakamura's smile widened. Turns out we were right. 10 years later, the joint Human Council Research Station, Horizon hung at the edge of known space, a testament to what could be achieved through cooperation. It was smaller than Fortress Olympus, but no less impressive, with sections designed by and for a dozen different species. Dr. Emily Thornton, now the station's chief of xenosociology, stood in the observation lounge with her old friend Trilvex. They were watching a joint exploration mission prepare to depart. 3 ships, crewed by humans, Nexians, Centauri, Tellurians, and Vraxians, heading into uncharted space. It's beautiful, Trilvex said softly. It is, Emily agreed. 10 years ago, this would have been impossible. Now it's routine. Not routine, Trilvex corrected gently. Extraordinary, but wonderfully, beautifully ordinary in its extraordinariness. Emily laughed. That's almost poetic. I've been reading human poetry. Your species has a gift for it. We have a gift for a lot of things, but so do all of you. That's what we're finally learning, that every species brings something unique to the table. The Council had experience and wisdom. Humanity had innovation and audacity. The Nexians have mathematical brilliance. The Centauri have biological expertise. The Tellurians have philosophical depth. Together, we're stronger than any of us alone. Do you think it will last? Trilvex asked. This new era of cooperation? I think it has to. The galaxy is too big, too complex, too full of challenges for any one species to face alone. We need each other. Emily paused. But even if it doesn't last forever, even if we eventually drift apart or find new conflicts, we'll have proven something important. That change is possible, that growth is achievable, and that the future doesn't have to be a repeat of the past. On the view screen, the exploration mission's ships activated their FTL drives and vanished into the unknown. To new horizons, Emily said, raising her coffee cup. To new horizons, Trilvex echoed, touching their cup to hers. Back on Earth, in a quiet office in Geneva, an elderly Admiral Nakamura sat reviewing reports. She'd officially retired 2 years ago, but old habits died hard. The latest reports were encouraging. Trade with Council species was booming, joint research was producing breakthrough after breakthrough, and humanity's starbase network had expanded to include facilities in Council space. More importantly, the cultural exchanges were thriving. Human students were studying at Council universities. Council artists were performing on Earth. Interspecies marriages were happening, though the biology was complicated. The galaxy was becoming smaller, more connected, more unified, but not homogenized. That was the key. Each species maintained its identity, its culture, its unique perspective. They weren't trying to all become the same. They were learning to celebrate their differences. Nakamura's assistant, a young Centauri named Krelvar, grandson of the engineer from the Wandering Star, as it happened, brought her tea. You should be enjoying retirement, Admiral, he said with a chittering laugh. I am enjoying retirement. This is what I do for fun. Humans have strange definitions of fun. So I've been told. Krelvar hesitated. Admiral, may I ask you something? Do you ever regret it? Revealing humanity to the Council? Nakamura was quiet for a long moment, thinking back to that day when the Wandering Star had limped into Sol space, when she'd made the decision to show rather than hide. No, she said finally. Hiding was the safe choice. Revealing ourselves was the right choice. Safe and right aren't always the same thing. And the Council, are you satisfied with how they've changed? The Council is still bureaucratic, still slow, still frustrating in 1,000 different ways. But they're trying, they're learning, they're growing. That's all any of us can do. She looked out the window at the stars, visible even through Earth's atmosphere thanks to the pollution controls humanity had finally implemented. You know what I think the real legacy of First Contact will be, Nakamura said. Not the technology or the trade or even the friendship. It'll be the reminder that nothing is permanent. No system, no government, no way of life lasts forever. Everything changes, everything evolves. The only question is whether you change deliberately or reluctantly, whether you embrace the future or get dragged into it kicking and screaming. Humanity chose to embrace it, Krelvar observed. Humanity chose to create it, Nakamura corrected with a smile. We didn't wait for someone else to give us permission to be great. We just did it. And then we invited everyone else along for the ride. She stood, stretching muscles that were beginning to show their age. Come on, I promised to meet my daughter for lunch, and she gets cranky when I'm late. Your daughter who married a Nexian? The same. They're trying to figure out the biological challenges of having children. Personally, I think they should just adopt, but what do I know? I'm just a retired admiral. As they left the office, Krelvar said, Admiral, there's a human proverb I've been trying to understand. Perhaps you can explain it. I'll try. Fortune favors the bold. What does it mean? Nakamura smiled, thinking of all the bold choices humanity had made. Hiding from the Council, building in secret, revealing themselves, refusing membership, demanding partnership as equals. It means that sometimes taking risks and being brave leads to good outcomes. But I think there's a better proverb, one that captures what we've learned. What is it? The wise person learns from everyone. We learned from the council's experience. The council learned from our innovation. And together, we learned that the galaxy is better when we share our wisdom instead of hoarding it. Krelvar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. That's a good proverb. I think so. Come on, let's go. My daughter hates waiting, and I'm told her Nexian husband's cooking is spectacular. They walked out into the sunshine, leaving the reports and the records behind. The galaxy would keep spinning, species would keep growing, and the future would keep unfolding in ways no one could predict. But whatever came next, they would face it together. And that, in the end, was the point. The stars shine brightest when we learn to shine together.